Welcome to The Right Focus, a podcast for writers, newbies, and veterans, and everyone in between. We're hosted by M.A. Lee with the assistance of Remy Black and Edie Rooms, all from Writers Inc. Books. Our focus is productivity, process, craft, and tools. Each episode lasts as long as it takes to fix a quick dinner, drive a short commute, or take a brisk walk. Resources and links are in the show notes. Visit us at therightfocus.blogspot.com. Now, on to this week's episode. A sidestep into screenwriting led Ryan Hines back to writing short stories and flash fiction and novels. He talks challenges and writing as a thief of life. That's the best quick tip any writer can offer. Our summer writing challenge has concluded, and in the last check-in, I offer stats and more. We do open with a quick tip. Then Ryan will talk on writing challenges. Overcoming difficulties is a constant process, no matter which profession you enter. All my guidebooks on writing contain insights that I wish someone had shared when I first started out. And I wish that someone had kept preaching those lessons to me. For most of those lessons, I was sitting in the choir. I knew them. I just didn't follow them. I especially needed lessons on writing daily and setting personal deadlines. Deciding to follow those 2 points alone finally put the wheels on my dream so I could travel the road to first publication and beyond. I taught plot structures and character essentials for years before I realized, idiot that I was, hey, this relates to my own writing. I've said it before, I'm not the brightest bulb, but I can still shine. The lesson that writer's block doesn't exist took me years to learn. I told myself the lie of writer's block so many times. Then I willfully blinded myself to it. I do remember the first time that I realized that so-called block was procrastination, and procrastination was fear of failure. And I remember realizing that planning eased the path to completion, whether that plan is a detailed outline, a sketch, or a brief map. I had some overwhelming years with my job. I continued to dabble at writing, using it as an escape, a time filler. I played at being a writer. I should have known better. At this point, I realized the insidious difficulties of writer's refusal. I didn't call it that, but I certainly had time to write and didn't want to write. Gradually, I learned that putting bum in chair and running a writing sprint is a quick way over that hurdle. Then came the dark years. About 9 years before I set off on my journey to publication, I found myself wallowing in the slime of inertia. I didn't land in inertia by choice. Part of it was depression from an overwhelming obligation for which I could see no way out. Part of it was health issues. A third part was a general hopelessness about writing. The road to publication through traditional publishing houses seemed closed. I've written stories of some type since 4th grade. If I'm not writing bits and pieces that could turn into a story, I'm not happy. And the wallowing world of inertia plopped me down into poisonous green slime. I couldn't see a way out. Through the grace of loved ones who threw me a rope, I clutched at that lifeline and started pulling myself out. Getting my health straightened out fixed some of the inertia. The overwhelming obligation, however, wasn't going to lift anytime soon. To escape it, rather than plop myself before the TV for yet more mindlessness or doom scrolling on social media, I returned to writing. Before I knew it, my nightly hour-long scribbles were turning into a story. Thank you, God. I finished that novel and started another one. My obligations became easier to deal with, but it took 5 more years before the leech of inertia stopped sucking at my creative energies. When I no longer needed an escape, I returned to that God gifted novel and revised it. I wrote another book and another one, a fourth one, a fifth one, and on and on. Then I stopped because I still felt hopeless about publication. And then Amazon's Kindle revolutionized the book industry. I came late to the Kindle revolution. I am extremely grateful to the indie writers who paved the way. I looked at them and thought, wow, I wish. If wishes were horses, the old proverb says, beggars would ride. Took me about a year to figure that one out. I know, I might shine, but I'm not the brightest bulb. I wish. Wishing to be a published writer finally clicked in my head with the Kindle revolution. I had books. I needed a plan. A step-by-step publishing plan. That became my mantra. Set goals. Don't tell anyone. Smash the hell out of them. Celebrate. Repeat. When you make those decisions, you no longer view writing as a hobby. You view it as the rewarding career that it will become. When you think like a pro, soon you are the pro. So here's the mantra. Dream it, believe it, and do it. So you're Ryan Hines. Please
Right.
introduce yourself to our audience. What do you write? How long have you been writing? And let's go.
Okay. Yeah. So my name, I go by Ryan Michael Hines. That's my full name. I figure if mom and dad gave me three names, I ought to use them all. And I write a lot of crime and adventure and a little bit of westerns. I've
Mhm.
been writing. I started off writing years ago when I was in my 20s. I was a musician, so I wrote songs and
Mhm.
played in a cover band, and we would, go up and down the East Coast and sneak in an original song, when we could get one past the guy who owned the bar. And then my after that, I worked as a farrier. I worked as a blacksmith, as a horseshoer for years. Worked for a horse trainer. Did that to put my wife through college, and then I was like, I want to go back, and I went to film school actually,
Mhm.
and studied screenwriting. And then we moved from Maryland out to Los Angeles,
Mhm.
and I went to UCLA, and I was fortunate enough to get in there and get an MFA in screenwriting. And but I never got any. I made a couple short films, but I never really got anything off the ground. I had some interesting stuff happen, but it's my prose was what started to really where I got some traction, and I always wanted to write short stories and novels. That's what I always wanted to do, but that seemed impossible. Somehow it seemed like the idea of getting someone to buy a pilot seemed more reasonable, which is kind of bonkers. And and then I was sort of relieved to have that completely not work, and so that I can now actually do the thing that I always wanted to do in the first place. So yeah, I've got a couple of short stories published. Had a novel out a couple of years ago. Um, that was a novelization of a scripted podcast that I did with a couple of actors out here that I wrote and directed and produced. That really got the like prose juices flowing. So anyway, that's kind of how I ended up where I'm at, and I've been fortunate enough to get published a couple places, and it's really wonderful to be sharing my work with people again, because when you write screenplays, it's just some jaded assistant who really doesn't want to be reading it, who's like looking at it. But when you get to be, if you're writing crime fiction, people love it, and so it's people, you're writing something that you love, and then people are reading it because they love it, and it's a really wonderful thing. Anyway, yeah, so that's kind of where we're at right now.
It's interesting how you went off into the wrong area and then you found your way back through
Hmm.
serendipity. You found your way
Yeah,
back into what you wanted to do. It's amazing the number of all the writers that I have interviewed, the ones that have talked about it have always done that. They've gone off
interesting.
into some area and then come back to what they love, and that has fulfilled them more than
Mm,
anything else has.
yeah. Well, I had
Mhm.
a when I when I was apprenticing to learn to shoe horses, the
Mhm.
guy I apprenticed with, he would always say, "I'd rather be lucky than smart," and so far that's worked out good for me because I feel the same way.
What now, when you were blacksmithing, did you ever work at Williamsburg or anything like that?
No, I never went down to the track, but I was mostly there was we were in a little bit in Virginia
Hmm.
and Maryland. We would go up to Pennsylvania sometimes, depending on where all we had to go or who, because we would shoe a bunch of horses for a cutting horse trainer, and then sometimes, those folks they would send them down to get them legged up for the season. And then if Mark really liked a horse, or we might drive out to wherever they're from, because we had
Hmm.
people from all over. There's only one cutting horse trainer in Maryland, and at least there was at that time, and I was lucky enough to we were lucky enough to work for him. So sometimes we would travel more in like in the winter to go find the work, and then when I had my own book of clients, it was mostly local around like outside of like Baltimore, like Montgomery County, Howard County, all that kind of area.
Okay, great. So how do you let's go straight to the topic or a challenge. How do you
Yeah.
view challenge in your writing?
So how do I, well, I had there were two kind of challenges that I thought about when you mentioned this podcast to me. And I thought one of the biggest challenges actually was graduate school, which I never
Mhm.
expected to go to. But the challenge of was to produce a ton of writing in a very limited period of time, with also you're getting critique and criticism back really quickly on everything you're doing. And what I found is that like basically nothing that I wrote in school have I been able to use for anything, which
Mhm.
was a real great challenge and lesson into one. So the challenge is like meeting all those goals and obligations,
Mhm.
but the reward is coming out on the other end and being like, and learning that you have to throw some things away and
Mhm.
learning what to listen to and what not to listen to, and really figuring out who you are as a writer, because you do learn pretty quickly when you take it. It's not bad advice, or people aren't trying to mess you up, but they inadvertently are. And then if you go down the wrong path a couple of times, you figure out, you're like, oh, that's not what I'm trying to do, and it helps you figure out. Yeah, it helps you find your voice. You know,
Right.
I feel. And another challenge that was came to mind was, writing for a specific publication. So if
Mhm.
you instead, sometimes, you have something that you want to do and you do it and you write it, and then you're sending it out, and maybe it's getting rejected, maybe it isn't, but it can be kind of that's just coming from inside you. I mean, they all are. But then if you look at a specific publication, you go, I like the specific call, or just a specific thing that maybe I could do something for them. And then you're trying to find that voice that now you've cultivated through all your years, and be it grad school or just writing workshops or just, being a person. And can I distill me and what I do into something that would work for these folks? And then you're within a framework that's different. It might be like length or type of genre or prompt or something, and it can really uh, challenge you to get outside of your comfort zone. And then sometimes you come up with really wonderful things. Like flash fiction was like that for me.
Right. It stretches you in ways
Mm,
that you did not anticipate. I started
yeah,
out with novels and I got
yeah,
very comfortable with the long form. And then I thought I should try short stories. That was very, very hard for me. The
yeah,
first short story that I wrote, I sat down and wrote it. It was 17,000 words long, and I thought I
yeah,
do not understand short stories. And
yeah.
it took like three tries before I was at the proper length with the proper twist to keep engagement going. Not a lot of uh, filler as in a lot more description that you can do in novels,
Mm,
uh, places and people and internal dialogue. You need to really pare it down and make it very strong and punchy with short stories.
yeah. Get to the heart
Hmm.
of a character almost immediately
Hmm.
through just the first thing they do or the first thing they say. You really need to get there fast, which is
Hmm.
a challenge, but also kind of it can be really exciting too.
Hmm. You get rolling into that short story, and I have fallen in love with a short story, and I sort of begrudge writing novels now because I'm going like, why do I have to describe this? It worked, shorter than that in the short
Yeah.
story. I shouldn't have to, and my first reader will argue with me. You need to really delve into this. You're in a longer format. You can delve into it. And I'm going like, no, I need to move on to the action kind of thing.
Yeah. I have a tendency when I write to write. I know a lot of people have long first drafts.
Mhm.
It's usually the opposite for me. Usually it's short, and then I like to just keep going and get it all down, and then later on I can go back and I can find and say, oh, we could use some more of this here, or some
Mhm.
more of this there. I'm working on a piece of flash fiction right now, which is it's got to be under 700 words, and I'm even
Yeah.
finding I'm finding I'm like, ooh, if I cut that, because then you're like, ooh, if I cut half a sentence here or two words out of here, if I get rid of this adverb or this adjective, then I can put a little tiny bit of, flavor right here. And
Mhm.
it really is kind of thrilling, to try to get even closer to what you're trying to get to with these really subtle, minute adjustments.
And with flash fiction, you really are making every word serve triple duty almost,
Mm,
because it's got to say what it needs to say, then it's got to punch or be extremely vivid or be exactly the correct word. What do they call that? The bon mot, um,
yeah.
for what you need.
Yeah. And you can kind of get a little bit lazy is not the right word, I think, but for anything that's longer, you can get there. You're like, I'll get there, we'll get around to it. We'll get around to it. But when you've got 700 words, you can't get around to it. You got to get there, and either you need it or you don't. And I am really actually, now that even more than I'm talking about it now, I have so much, because it is a little bit actually like songwriting, because the format is
Mhm.
much short, just number of words, just much shorter. And you're trying to get this idea across in a very efficient way.
That's what I love about poetry because
Mm,
every word is such a compact form. Every word is serving multiple purposes. And once you start examining each individual word, it's like when E. E. Cummings came alive for me, it wasn't just the words on the page, it was how long the line was or how short
hmm
the line was and things like that. It opened up this huge knowledge base of what he was working with and what he
Yeah.
chose to uh, he's known for not doing capital letters, but what he would choose to capitalize or what he would choose to set off with parentheses. I just fell in love with him. My students would go insane because I would throw something at him at them, and they would just go like, I don't get it. I don't get it. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah. No, but that is the beautiful thing about. And then if you take that specificity of language,
Mhm.
and then when you do a longer piece, like, and that's what I'm like a personal challenge I'm working on right now is taking that specificity and using it in my short stories because it makes them better, and
Mhm.
using it in my novels. And man, if I can really distill this down to the best, most effective pieces, and I
Mhm.
just string all those together, how much better will this book be? I wrote a short story 3 years ago, and it was a really uh, to me, it was like it was a one that I loved. But it came out and it was long. It was like 14,000. It was long, and I kind of didn't really know enough. And I thought, boy, this is great. And I kept sending it out and I couldn't get it in any place. And then I just realized I was like, I'm going to have to knock this down a lot. And,
Mhm.
and that was another challenge of finding, it is going to be published later this year. And I think it's down to like 4,500 words, 4,700.
Oh, you
I mean,
took it. Oh my goodness.
way down. Yeah,
Yes.
and I realized it's not that everything I took out of it was that it was bad, but I just really, really honed it down, and got it to something that really packed the punch that I needed. Apparently it worked for somebody, right? Because they're going to publish it.
Mhm.
So, and that was a huge challenge getting, because I was looking at this thing because it had been that story had been kicking around in my head for years. I thought maybe it'll be a movie, maybe it's the first episode of a TV show, maybe it's a novel, maybe it's a song, and then I was like, oh man, I think it's a short story. And then I got it down. I was so happy after, I'm not kidding, like, because you know how you have those ideas
Hmm.
that they're kind of with you for a long time, a decade or so. Just something happened or somebody said something to you, you're in a coffee shop or a bar and you hear somebody say something and you're
It's
just like, man, it just
lurking
kind of,
behind you.
yeah,
Yeah.
just there. Yeah. Like a ghost haunting you. And you're thinking someday that's going to, I'm going to do something with that. And I had several false starts with this because I knew I was like, this is a thing. It's a thing for me. And I was so happy to get it down. And then it's like nobody else felt that way about it, when they read it. And I thought, man, that really bummed me out. And then I thought, oh, there's another, and this is also, I think, just the thing of life is every time you pick the lock to one door, you find there's another challenge, there's another door behind it. You got it, which is great because it's never boring, but sometimes it can be a little exhausting.
Yes.
And but so then, yeah, taking this thing and finding a way, I was like, I really got to knock this thing down a lot and find the thing in it that I love, not lose the thing that I love
Hmm.
about it that speaks to me, but make sure but if I really polish this and that so that other people will see what I love about it so much easier, that they'll find it and I finally did. So that was really nice, but it was a real, not a slog, but it was, at first I thought, I was like, I don't think I can do this. Like
Hmm.
and yeah. And then the nice thing is if you do you get over that hurdle,
Right.
that's just one more notch in your belt. And you're like, yeah, I can, so you're much less afraid of the next challenge you come up against.
Yes. Do you find that with flash fiction, especially, that you're relying on the reader to make inferences, or you're
Mm.
presenting them everything that they need and you're just taking out all the extraneous?
I think a little bit you do have to, you just can't give the reader a lot. So they
Hmm.
have to be able to, so I guess, yeah, you're putting the dots, well, maybe a little bit further apart than you normally would
Hmm.
and hoping they make the leap. You're leaving
Right.
little breadcrumbs. It's almost like hints because you can only say it, you can only, if like I write a lot about, Appalachia, that's where my dad's family's from. And
Hmm.
you only have the space to even just drop a place name or a description. And you can only do it once and it's got to be, and they've got to be, because if they miss it, it's gone. Because so you don't have space because sometimes you're like, I'm going to make sure that the reader picks up on this, and you can hit them over the head 2 or 3 times with something. But with flash fiction, you definitely don't have room for that. So yeah, I think you are making suggestions, but then it also leaves things a little bit, because it is almost like a poem then, because of how short they are,
Hmm.
that you can leave a little space. And I think people might read, like I gave a draft of this to a friend of mine, this thing I'm working on now, and he saw something in it that I hadn't meant to put there, but it's because there's a little bit more space, and
Right.
that's, and then we always, everything, once you create something, the person who receives it is going to receive it in the way they receive it, and it's not yours anymore.
Right.
So there's a lot of that anyway. With anytime you create anything, people take from it what they take from it, and maybe it's what you meant, maybe it's not, or a combination of both. But especially with flash fiction, I think there's a lot of opportunity for people to end up interpreting something in an interesting way that you don't see, because of kind of it's very tight, but it's also very loose at the same time.
Right. They went into a bend that you weren't anticipating,
Hmm.
and brought a whole wealth of their background knowledge into the
Yeah.
story that, changed an aspect of it. Have you ever
Hmm.
thought about taking some of your flash fiction and expanding it into a novella or something?
I am thinking about that right now, actually, um, because I kind of like to. I had a piece that got published last year where there's two things going on. There's the story, but then there's also uh, a song. It's like a folk song, that
Mhm.
it's a folk song that like the lyrics, it sounds like a real folk song, but it's not real. I made it up,
Right.
that sort of inform what's happening in the action. And it was
Yeah.
a really neat rhythm because you get a couple stanzas of this folk song and then you get a bit of the story, which and they're kind of related but not expressly related. And then you get, and I thought that's a really cool rhythm. And I love that. And I'm working on another flash fiction piece like that. And I thought it would be really fun to do a book that follows that same pattern. I'm sure somebody else has done it some ways before, but so I'd like to take that idea and expand it into something bigger.
Right. And the thing about publishing now is that if you can present it well enough, people are more open to interesting and the unusual than I think they were in the past. And
Yeah.
so they're more open to things being slightly different from what they're used to.
Hmm. And also for me, after having spent, you're always, when you're like out here in Southern California, like everybody's chasing a commercial trend because you're hunting that big money. That's what
Right.
everybody, that's
Yeah.
the, I'm, I can't say that's, people are about the work but when you're trying to sell a movie script or something like that, you're trying to score,
Hmm.
you're trying to score, you're trying to hit it big.
Right.
And, and I decided a couple of years ago that even if something I think maybe has a little bit more limited appeal, but if I really want to do it, then why not just do it?
Hmm.
Because when it's finished, if if it makes me happy and I've achieved what I want to achieve, then it's a thing out there. And if that means that, not that I don't think about an audience or think about the audience, because that's not what I'm saying, but that it has to be something that really speaks to me because I'm going to take the time and the energy to do it. So I want it to be something that I think is, you know, beautiful or good or whatever you want to call it. So even if I feel like something might have a slightly more limited appeal, but it's something that I think is worth doing at this point, I'm just going to do it, you know?
Right. Right. And I think there is an audience out there. It might be a niche audience, but if you are interested in it, then other people will be as well.
Hmm.
And they just need to find it. Um,
Yeah.
and that's the big thing
Hmm.
I find is that making other eyes see it besides just this little narrow window. It needs to be seen by many multiple people. And then once they find it, word of mouth carries it from there.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. That's something I'm trying to figure out how to navigate because I don't want to spend a ton of time on social media trying to get the word out because that's like a miserable way to spend your life,
Yeah, it is.
and so trying to figure out how to, advertise or just trying to find a balance, because of doing work, but then also helping people find it once you do it. Because
Mhm.
I don't want to just, it's not just for me, it's for other people. That's why
Right.
what I mean? I want to share it with people. So that's another challenge finding the balance between promoting the things you're doing and spending energy finding good effective ways that don't really drain you of doing that
Right.
because now everybody, it's sort of the old system of sort of everything's kind of feels like it's falling apart a little bit, that
Right.
everybody who's doing anything, you are the, if you have a YouTube channel, you're writing it, you're directing it, you're usually starring in it, you're shooting it, you're the cinematographer, you're the editor, then you're also the ad exec and the producer and you're the whole thing. You're doing everything.
Mhm.
And technology makes that possible, which is great, but it also makes it's a lot. It's just nobody's out there. So many fewer people are like, I'm a writer and I've got a guy, I've got my ad guy, and I've got my agent, and all those kind of people that take care of the nuts and bolts things for you are almost at as much of a loss as you are anymore. So you have to take on a lot more responsibility for that kind of thing than I think maybe traditionally people did before.
And it eats. It eats into the time that you need for your creativity.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like this podcast.
Shh. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
that's it.
Dog's barking. Sorry. Hush. Hush.
There's someone at your door.
Sorry. One second.
There's someone at your door.
Yeah.
And I think your mouth just went.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much.
Sorry, she's never barked. We just adopted her on Saturday,
Oh,
and she's never barked at anybody before. But at least she's paying attention.
that's important.
Yeah.
That's
Yep.
important. And
Yeah.
she will love you forever.
Well, because I thought when we first got her, I was like, I don't know, man. If somebody broke in, she might, just lick him to death. I don't really know because she was so relaxed. But at least now I know she's like, she didn't know that guy. She knows me and she knows my wife, but she doesn't know that fella. So we'll be all right, I think.
I think so. I think so.
Yeah.
That makes it interesting. Uh,
Yep.
but a lot of things do take time from your creativity, and I find that probably the biggest challenge at all because I have my commitments to people that I love, and I
Mm-hmm.
want to
Yeah.
give them the time that they need. But then after it's over with, I'm thinking, oh, I lost this time and this time and this time and this time, and I'm thinking I can't get that back. And then I
Yeah.
realize, well, no, I'm working in the time that I'm supposed to be. You know, I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, and I am as equally obligated to them, to those that I love, as I am to the writing that I love.
Yeah.
And juggling both of those can be difficult and frustrating, but it's also feeds your creativity as well.
Oh, yeah. Life is where it all comes from. I mean,
Mhm.
because, I'm just a thief. Like, I'm just stealing the things that happen to me or the people around me, or, I was just telling a friend of mine because I've had a lot of jobs. One of the jobs I worked when we first got to LA was I worked in a produce department for 7 years, and I met the coolest people there, the coolest guys, and they would tell me these stories, and one of them they've all lived here for most of their lives, and they've got stories about LA back in like the 90s and the
Mhm.
2000s when things were kind of different. The neighborhood was different, and
Mhm.
the people they knew and they ran across, and the stuff like the trouble that their granddads used to get into. You know what I mean? Back when LA was a lot smaller and a lot different,
Yes. Mhm.
and it's such a rich, beautiful history. And there's a couple of guys in a short story, that one that's going to get published later this year, that are guys. They're guys that I used to, we were in the produce cooler, just, shooting the breeze, dodging our manager, and they're telling me these stories about something that happened back in the day. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Mhm.
And so, it's just wonderful to meet wonderful people. And when you're out there in the world, you meet wonderful people, and life is for sharing. And when you're sharing it with people it's just such a joy to meet
Mhm.
interesting folks that enrich our lives. And then if you're fortunate, you can enrich their life too. And then you take that stuff, and then that's the juice, that's the thing and spending time with your loved ones, and with, the people that you work with, or the people in your community, whatever that is, that's where you get the ingredients to make the things that we make. So, and it also just makes your life, that's what makes a good life. So because I used to beat myself up, like I got to be about the work and spend all this time, but it's really important to have everything, because if you aren't taking the time your obligations will, I guess your obligations and the joys of the rest of your life outside of writing will make your writing better and make it what it is. You need everything. And that's okay. So
Yeah.
yeah, trying to give yourself permission to live a good full life, because that's where the magic comes from anyway, I think.
Yeah, it is. It definitely is. Now, we're running out of time, so this episode will air the first Wednesday in September. I'm
Right on.
running ahead,
Yeah.
which I didn't anticipate, but that's a good thing. That's a very good thing. So is there anything that you would like to promote or talk about that you want the audience to know about?
Okay, well, coming into September, hopefully I should have, well, so I just got a short story published in Saddlebag Dispatches.
Mm-hmm.
It's a story called Rustlers by God, and that was in this April's Saddlebag Dispatches. And I
Is
should
that
have a
an
short story.
online publication?
It's both. It's like
Okay.
you can get it off. So you can go to saddlebagdispatches.com and you can read the stories. You can also buy it on Amazon. Coming in September, my book Moonshine Land: A Tale of Haunted Appalachia is a great Halloween story, and that's always available. So you can check that out. You can get that off Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com. You can go to my website RyanMHines.com and get it there. You can also listen to the podcast on any of it's just Moonshine Land, all one word. It'll come up on wherever you get your podcast from, you can find it. And that's a great fall, spooky time of year story, which will be coming into in September.
Okay, great. Well, that will be wonderful. Anything else you want to talk about?
No, I just thank you so much for having me on. This has really been a wonderful conversation. And it's so nice to meet you. And
It was nice to meet you, and I enjoyed hearing about flash fiction. I've been avoiding flash fiction. Now you
give it a try.
A bee in my bonnet.
Yeah.
And I'll try to start thinking about it.
Yeah, the great thing about it is if it's terrible, it's over fast,
I'm not sure I would have the success that you did of taking a 14,000 word story and knocking it down to a little over 4,000. That's phenomenal.
It needed work. It needed work.
So it was nice to meet you, Ryan.
Wonderful. Wonderful speaking to you.
This is our wrap-up check-in, and it's in September. It covers the last 5 days of the Summer Writing Challenge, August 27 to 31. I'm not even going to talk about numbers and word count at all. I surpassed my goal at the previous check-in. In these 5 days, I wrote the book description, worked out keywords, finished the last of the formatting, then published, ebook only. I then combined the book with its companion to create a duology. I aligned the formatting, worked out a book description for both books in the duology. I will wait a couple of weeks to publish the duology, which will also be a paperback. Trim size, page count, back cover text, and other specs go to the cover designer to create the paperback cover. The ebook and paperback will publish together. These three, ebook of the novella and ebook and paperback of the duology, have almost used up my ISBNs. Backers offers lots of 10 to purchase, and I purchased those as well as updated my book list ledger. Then I sat back and vegged out for the last 2 days of August. I know my next project. I have a great start on the next podcast series for autumn, and we won't be off to the races for the rest of this year. Time to relish mulling over the next project, finish out this one when the paperback cover comes in, and take time to enjoy the start of September. I trust you enjoyed your own summer writing challenge and succeeded with your goal. Share in the comments section, and never forget to write on. Thanks for listening to The Write Focus, a podcast for writers at all levels, hosted by Emma Lee from Writers Inc. Books, assisted by Renee Black and Edie Runes. Our focus is productivity, process, craft, and tools. Music is licensed through Audio Jungle, called Background Music Loop. Its creator is Alexander Polishchuk, known on Audio Jungle as Plastic 3. The music comes in different iterations. Show notes and resource links for this and other episodes can be found at thewritefocus.blogspot.com. Write to us at winkbooks@aol.com when you have questions, comments, and speculations. We will try to answer you as quickly as possible. By the way, we will not mind your email address. That's rude. If you find value in our content, share with your writing friends or write a review. We're small beans here without the advertising budget of the big peeps, and you can make a difference. And whatever occurs, write on.